Okay, it's live now.
I have 6 for the taxes already to start with, and I'll just keep printing.
You have 6 for the tax?
At least.
Okay.
I've got others I'm printing that have hit before 6 o'clock.
Okay. Well, it is 6 o'clock. Did they have anybody sign up that wanted to come in?
We did not have a sign up. They were going to show up at 6 o'clock to come in according to the rules.
Is there
They
somebody
know
out
it's out
there?
there.
We have somebody.
We probably should get them to put their name on the list. We got paper Fiscal out there.
Gary is out there monitoring the front.
Brad, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, we can hear you too, so we're good.
Here. We also need to We're going to wait just a couple of seconds for Angel to get back.
Okay.
You ready, Angel?
I've got to go through these and mark them and sort them out real quick.
Okay.
Because I've got them for both groups.
Yeah, we're just waiting for, to get our public comment, printed out. We do not have anybody in person today or yet. So if we'll just give us a couple of minutes and then we'll get going with the agenda. Thank you all. Elaine, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. Is that okay, Angel? If she goes ahead and gets started, and then she can come and get, if there's more when you finish
She should
sorting.
have all of that this time for the tax rate.
She has all of them?
For the tax rate.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to call to order the public hearing on tax rates for 2021. We have Ms. Bailey who's reading the public comment for the public hearing. Thank you, Elaine.
Sure.
Okay. Dan Grubb, good evening. I apologize I am unable to attend this evening's tax meeting. I have contacted the board multiple times, voicing my frustration about your recent decisions regarding tax rate, reentry, and virtual learning. I do want to voice support for the fixed tax rate. The board has already approved their budget based on this rate. Woodford County schools are set to have an increased budget versus prior year with this arrangement. If you had notified the public of the need for more funds to support reentry, maybe I would have a different opinion. It appears raising the tax rate is intended to fund the new high school construction, or more accurately, support the loan for the architect. I understand the need for a new high school, but I would challenge you to find another way to fund this project versus raising taxes on the community at this time. I also take offense that the board canceled the original September 8th reentry meeting to replace it with a meeting focused on raising taxes to fund new construction. All this while schools are closed due to the pandemic, except for sports practices. The timing confirms where the board's priorities lie. 1, money. 2, new high school. 3, athletics. 4, education. The children haven't seen a classroom since March. They have missed 5 months of school this year. It would be extremely unfair to raise taxes to pay for the new high school while relying on parents to do the heavy lifting of teaching, feeding, managing IT, etc. There is nothing like paying more for less. In my opinion, the board has not earned an increased budget and obviously cannot be trusted to do what is right for the children or their education. Have a nice evening, Daniel Grubb. Chip Rubble. We gladly support Philip and Mary Rubble. We gladly support the board's decision to increase our tax rate if an increase is deemed necessary to keep Woodford County Public Schools a great district. Please vote to protect our district's financial interests so we can continue to maintain our existing schools and nurture our school district's bright future. When my family chose to move to Woodford County just 3 short years ago, our decision was made in part with the knowledge that Woodford County Public Schools were among the best in Kentucky. We feel that it is still true and want to see this continue. Our family has always supported public education. We strongly believe that investing in our public schools is in everyone's best interest. Our Woodford County tax rates are normal and remain in line with those of surrounding counties. School taxes are a way for us to give back, express our shared values, and make our community's future better. I want a better future for Woodford County, and I am willing to invest through my school property tax to make that happen. We appreciate the difficult financial decisions that the WCPS board members have had to make over the past few years. Thank you all for your continued service to this community. Philip and Mary Rubble. Jimmy Bren, Woodford County Board of Education. I appreciate the opportunity to voice an opinion that may be unpopular in many circles, but an opinion I have consistently advocated for and remains in congruence with longstanding support of students and teachers. I ask the Board of Education to exercise its power to ensure revenue growth at the district and increase the rate to allow for the 4% revenue growth. This annual increase is necessary to ensure a district not only keeps up with the rising price of goods, but ensures the district is able to provide for the increasing needs of the student population and provides an opportunity for employee compensation to move closer to matching the demands placed on them as educators and educational support staff. In November of 2020, while still employed by Woodford County Schools, I wrote the board a letter expressing concerns with the ability to continue to adequately fund the supports needed for teachers and students with the additional restriction of funds that was done at that time. I thank the board for the unrestricting of those additional funds that I called in question in November, and thus come to you today with the congruent and consistent position that the Board of Education does all possible to ensure that decisions today do not place burden on the future. Failure to utilize the ability to take the rate needed for increases in district revenue compounds in the future and risks the same financial ramifications that I expressed concern with in November, as quoted from that letter. Quote, financial ramifications that include the potential cutting of instructional programs, inhibiting the ability to provide teachers the financial raises they need so they are able to remain in the school system they love, and restricting the district's ability to continue to ensure teachers can say, I have the resources I need to ensure my students can make growth. The current mechanism afforded to boards of education to adequately provide for students and staff is a limited mechanism that operates under an assumption that the property value of an individual is directly proportional to an individual's assessable income to pay taxes on that property. I wish to be clear that I find this method of funding education inequitable, as the tax in many situations results in being a regressive tax, as property's owner's income does not move congruently in relation to the value of one's property. In a proud and strong agricultural community, many of these inequities are present across all levels of property value and do cause disproportional burden. I support that all discussions of the raising of tax rates, whether the annual review to ensure consistent funding or discussion of larger increases to address clear need, should responsibly include dialogue around the specific burden, and never should the amount be communicated as insignificant. It is significant, and I appreciate the position of those recognizing the vulnerability of community members. Is that it? Okay. Jimmy Brown. John Wilson. Board members, I would like to share a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. Quote, I hate paying taxes, but I love the civilization they give me. Think about that. You are providing much more than you are receiving with a 4% tax increase. You are the body that is in control of what you will be able to provide. You and only you can do that. What a profound position you are in. Please consider that your district is coming out of a period of time that you ran on deficit stated in the amount of millions of dollars, millions, where you said yourselves it was a state of financial negligence. You are just now digging yourselves out of that hole. How can you proceed with not providing the most you can to stabilize your out-of-control budget? It's common sense. You have to give Woodford County a civilization that will most prepare them to succeed. The 4% increase will do that. Regards, John Wilson. Missy Jones. Hello, I'm writing to support the 4% tax increase and to ask the board members to support it too. This will allow us to continue with needed programs. We can't have more discussion of deficits and programming cuts. We are just now to the point where that discussion isn't the main topic in every meeting. You have to be sure that you have given everything you can to support the opportunities that our kids need. We have to learn to live in the new COVID world. We don't know what the future will look like, so we need to make sure we have acquired all of the funding needed to support our future. Why would you choose to shortchange our students? Why would you vote against making sure funding is adequate for our teachers? Why wouldn't you do the right thing for them? Please vote for the 4% tax increase. Missy Jones. Kevin Walls, Board of Education, thank you for the work you are doing during such trying times. I'm writing to support the board in taking a 4% tax increase. We all know that we are in uncertain times. All the more reason for the board to ensure it has the needed resources to meet the requirements of funding our schools. It is important that you understand the budgetary needs and ensure that the funding is in place for what is required. Our children, faculty, administration, and staff are depending on you for that. No question that this is a difficult thing to consider in our current situation, but you have to take a stand for the needs of those that are depending on you. Thank you for your time, Kevin Walls. Lori Deans. I am writing to you to make a request to take an additional 4% tax increase. As a professional educator trying to work with adolescents, it is essential to have all of the needed tools and opportunities available to teach them and reach them. All of these cost money. As a professional educator, I'm well aware of the risks involved when funding doesn't exist. I've spent many of my own dollars to get items that are required for classrooms and tools needed for students. I'm asking you to do all you can to do to make sure the money that is needed is there for us to use. The benefits to this 4% increase are many. It will provide staffing that is needed. It will provide tools for students that are needed with both virtual learning and learning in the classrooms. It will provide a strong foundation for the coming year to remove a deficit that may be forecast. I hope you will consider this request, as I believe it will put our schools in the best position for the future. Sincerely, Lori Deeds. Lisa Griggs, Board of Education. I'm not sure why we are right back where we've been for the past several months. The board needs to remember that it is responsible for education in this community. How could you possibly vote to underfund it? This funding is our only source. Please do not cut it short. We all want our children to achieve all that they can, and we all know that this is impossible without appropriate resources. This funding will provide us with what is necessary and will ensure our children can be successful. Please, please do not take the lesser amount. Please stand for our children and their needs and approve the 4%. Thank you for your time, Lisa Griggs. Debbie Arbuckle. Board members, as a taxpayer, I don't want higher taxes. As a parent, I want the best opportunities for my children. The latter wins out for me, and I hope it does for you too. The 4% option gives my children a chance at the best opportunities. Please do vote to give that to all of the children in our district. Why would we want them to be at a disadvantage during all of the unknown that is currently happening? We need to provide them with what we can when we don't know what will be around the next turn. I continue to hear how our teachers are struggling to get the supplies they need and don't want to be part of that problem. I want to be part of the solution to give them the supplies necessary. I hope you feel the same and will support the 4% tax option. It's the best we can do, and we owe it to the children. Thank you, Debbie Arbuckle.
Was that it?
That's it?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Did you say something?
I just said it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we will adjourn from the, do you have a motion to adjourn from the public forum? Hearing? Second, we have a motion by Mr. Wilson, a second by Ms. Bradley. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Now I'm going to call to order the special board meeting to set tax rates. Let the record show that all board members are present. The only item on the agenda is to adopt the FY21 tax rates. Do we have a motion on that?
I move that the board levy a general tax rate of 69.8 cents on real property and 69.8 cents on personal property, which is the rate identified by the Kentucky Department of Education, which will produce revenue from real property exclusive of revenue from new property that is 4% over the amount of revenue produced by the compensating tax rate as defined in KRS 132.010.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to pursuant to KRS 16470 that we levy a tax rate of 69.8 cents on a real property and 69.8 cents on personal property, which is the 4% rate. Any discussion?
I'd like to get, can I ask the superintendent's recommendation on the motion, please?
And I think it's one of those situations where school districts always use additional dollars. And this year is probably more difficult than most because of what our community and our citizens are facing. And I had recommended the flat tax rate when we adopted the budget, and I guess it was June. And I want to be sensitive to the folks in our community, and so I would continue with that recommendation.
So you recommend opposition to the motion?
I would recommend a flat tax rate.
All right.
Any further discussion? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Wilson. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'd like to explain my yes vote.
I'm sorry, Angel.
He's probably away from the mic, he cannot hear it.
Oh, okay. yeah, make sure that we can all be heard. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to speak in favor of the motion, and I disagree with the superintendent about the flat tax, keeping the tax flat. I really appreciated the public comments tonight. They were moving to me, especially the one who I believe said, I don't like paying taxes, but I want my child to have the best education possible. And I really, really appreciated that comment. I've heard the superintendent say over and over again, we're in uncertain times. We have no idea what COVID is going to do. Just last week, at our last meeting, we approved a $500,000 increase in the budget for teachers and IAs because of the responsibilities we had to educate both in school and at home. We've been told that if we allow any more students who originally wanted to go virtual to go in, it's going to cost more teachers. We have no idea what other expenses may come up. On the horizon, we have new board members. We have a new superintendent. We need to allow those new people the best opportunity to be successful. And I say that from my heart. To me, it's a clear choice. And I hope I've articulated why I support Ms. Bradley's motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, I do have some discussion, Debbie. First, I would just like to say that, the budget that we approved in June, the budget that we were given in June, kept all of our programs and kept our needs. All of that was considered in the budget. And that budget was predicated on a flat tax. At that point, we had the opportunity to do a budget with the 4%, and we didn't. We chose to do it based on the flat tax rate. And I appreciate so much the public comment tonight. I appreciate people's willingness to step up and fund our schools. I think that is vital and that is honorable. I just have a difference of opinion about what is absolutely necessary right now. So right now, we have a budget for this next year that we approved that the flat tax supported. At that point, the flat tax was covering those expenses. And since then, we have added expenses. We added $350,000 a year, every year, for a total of over $7 million for the new high school. The COVID expenses, the pandemic expenses, a lot of that we are going to receive federal funds to help cover. Those are all one-time expenses. But this tax increase would not be a one-time. It would be this year, next year, next year, next year, next year, and so on. And so when I've been talking to my constituents and people, I just feel like the flat tax rate is a great balance for doing right for our school district while it honors the needs of our constituents during a pandemic, during an economic crisis. As a result of the increase in property values, we would have the opportunity to generate $370,000 of additional revenue by keeping it flat. That's additional revenue after you adjust for the seat. So just by leaving it flat, we would still be increasing our revenue. And I just don't feel like now is the right time to add extra burden on families by increasing the tax rate. If we leave it flat, we get an increase in revenue. It's sufficient to cover all of our budgetary needs from the draft budget. And it really is just a win-win for everyone. I think, in addition, we have to consider that we've been doing virtual learning for a large part, the 4th of last year and for the first month of this year. And those are decreased costs to the district. So we've had some savings there. And I also feel like it's really, really hard for me to ask our taxpayers for additional dollars when we have restricted money just sitting in a savings account basically for the past 2 years. So to date, we have at least $700,000 of general fund money that's stashed away for the new school. Additionally, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 in capital outlay dollars. I just don't know how we can ask the public to give us more taxes when we have at least $1.2 million just setting aside. It's restricted, but it could be unrestricted and used for general fund expenditures. The other thing is that we have a lot of districts around us that are taking the flat rate, that are taking the compensating rate. I've been looking, and a few that I know of are Anderson. These are either planning to or already voted for flat or compensating rate. Boyle, Danville, Knox, Davies, Owensboro Independent, Bellevue, Grayson, Clark, and just last night, Mercer County voted to take the compensating rate. I really would like to kind of hear from you all what has changed since June when we approved the flat tax and we approved a budget predicated on flat tax till now.
Okay, I would have some follow-up questions, I think specifically for you, Mr. Hawkins. The June budget, did that include the 5 new positions that we added at our last meeting?
No.
And what's the average cost per position?
5 new teachers would be in the neighborhood of $225,000.
And
So not half a million, but about $225,000.
I thought you said our last meeting we added $450,000.
That was including the potential for all the bus monitors.
and were
But
those,
we are going to have bus monitors, aren't
Right, but you just said the teachers.
we? Okay, for employees.
okay, so including the bus monitors, the $450,000, was that included on the June budget?
No.
No. And to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Wilson said, do you anticipate that we may have to hire new teachers going? Sorry.
Yes, actually, we'll be discussing later this evening.
And how many?
8
And so the total cost for 8 new teachers?
in the neighborhood of 8 times 45. If we think about that, so 8 times 5 is $360,000.
So now we're at $810,000 over what we projected in the June budget. Are there any other costs that you're not attributing to the CARES fund?
We could potentially use, if the board wants to move forward with cleaning service, which I think we would recommend, that could be done with the CARES funds.
Okay, but no other things that
I have no idea what to expect, and that's what I said. If you remember at our last meeting, we have no idea what costs we may anticipate. That's why I pleaded with you not to restrict $350,000.
but looking at this,
Because of those unknown costs and the fact that we are sitting on money that could be used for those purposes.
okay,
I mean, because the $350,000 from last year and for this year could nearly cover all of those new positions.
And are
no,
these one-time
it's
positions?
$810,000.
I think could nearly
Cover. And so right now, with the motion that's on the floor, we're looking at an estimated revenue of $829,000 minus the SEEK adjustment, which is how much?
$300,000.
$300,000. So it's only going to be $529,000
And we are also budgeting a potential 4% reduction of SEEK in a year.
Okay, and what do you project that cost will be?
I believe I said it was about $380,000, $375,000. So if that were to happen, we would have a net increase of $130,000.
So $810,000 plus $375,000 is over $1 million in increased costs from June to present.
Correct.
And I understand your feelings completely on the restricted money, but I'm
Correct.
having trouble reconciling
We
how.
also have capital outlay funds that could be applied to general fund expenditures. So again,
Right.
they could be applied to this year because I have no idea if these new positions are going to carry forward. They may be 1 year on. I would not necessarily anticipate that all of these new positions would be needed next year if we are able to move back to a normal school opening.
Sure.
So I think when you look at funds that are available that are set aside, if those were to be applied, they would cover the vast majority of our new expenses. So, and again, that's, I think that has to be taken into consideration.
Do you think, so the 375,000, so that's a $1.185 million. And do the staff increases that you're projecting tonight include numbers from the elementary schools that students that want to adjust back?
That is because of that.
Okay, so there, you don't anticipate that there will be more than that?
I certainly hope not, because this would allow us to make one adjustment and go on through the end of the semester.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, do you have anything else from Ms. Richardson?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think that it's reaching to expect our families to, right now they're educating their students and to also raise their taxes in a time where there's so many people who are experiencing a financial strain that is beyond anything I can imagine myself. And, you know, even if we do go back to school, we are very likely going to be going back home and on virtual. It might be once this semester, it might be multiple times, it might go through the whole entire year. So these families who are in a financial strain right now, they don't even have the guarantee that the parent who's staying home can go back to work. I don't know how they can plan to go back to work full time. So to add another tax after we previously had promised that we wouldn't raise the taxes, and then we had to do that again this year when we're in such unsure times, I just think that I would feel like I was digging into the pocket of a family who already were strained and, you know, having enough hard times. So I don't think that we should take the 4% tax rate. I think we need to make it work. That's our responsibility.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll have a turn to say. And
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were.
I do want to make one point very clear, and this came up last year too. I think for a board, and I've talked to boards across the state, it is routine to get 3 different budgets. By adopting a budget on a certain rate is not a promise to adopt that tax rate. And that's different. I think by doing this 2 years in a row and making that like that was an obligation is going to make future boards reluctant to explore different budgets with different tax rates. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, let's go. Does anybody else have anything to say?
I did. Okay. I wanted to say that the expenses you described, Danny, are not necessarily ongoing expenses. They are related to the pandemic. I would anticipate we would go back to our staffing formula once we get through the pandemic. And so to have a reoccurring tax on the taxpayers forever to cover one-time expenses doesn't seem to really pass the fairness test to me. And then again, I would say that we have 1.2 million set aside and restricted for the school. We can unrestrict that and utilize those funds for this year. We also have a contingency fund that is for emergencies. And surely to goodness, this pandemic would qualify as an emergency and the proper use of a contingency. And then, you know, I would also say that I feel like what we need to really discuss too is the long-term effect of this. So by leaving it flat, we would generate revenue, $370,000. By increasing it 4%, we would generate revenue somewhere in the neighborhood, you said, of $500,000. And so I think at some point we have to look at, is this a revenue problem or is this a spending problem? And obviously we've got some extra expenses with staff. Those are one-time kinds of expenses. Hopefully we can recover some of that with CARES money or with FEMA money. with, extra revenue from the federal or state government. And then the rest can be covered with contingency. We can work this budget, to Ms. Richardson's point, we can work this budget. We can make this happen for the taxpayers without raising taxes, with the increase that we'll get on leaving it flat, by cutting some expenses. We have to decide what expenses are more important right now. And the public has submitted comments and has contacted all of us, I know, saying, please use your revenue for your students. Please use your revenue for reentry. Please use your revenue for mental health. And so I think if we can do that, we can honor that, leave the tax rate flat, and have enough money to cover our budget. We can absolutely do that if we choose to. The other thing is that when we raise this, that compounds. It compounds every year. And so if you recall, Chip Sutherland of Bayard cautioned the board before we even started down the road of taking the general fund dollars out for the high school that we would likely have to take the 4% rate in the foreseeable future. So we're 2 years into the project, and so far, number one, the board has taken the 4% increase for the last 2 years, and it's barely passed with 3 votes. Number two, the district has taken a loss in the last 2 fiscal years because our expenditures outpaced our revenue, not because our tax rate was less than 4%. We set it at the maximum amount. So setting it at 4% doesn't solve our problem. Our problem is that when we get budgets and when we get projections from Mr. Hawkins and from our CFO, instead of looking at that and saying, oh my gosh, we don't have extra money to spend, for whatever reason, we've decided, why not just spend the revenue? Even though they say we don't have it, even though we can't even take it from our budget, it's not in our income to take. We have to get it from our savings. So the problem isn't necessarily with the 4% rate, because we've done that for the past 2 years, and still our revenue did not cover our expenditure. So that's a spending problem. And then the other thing is that, we're on a pattern. We're on a pattern right now where we are going to be forced to take the 4%, yet that money is not being utilized for the pandemic things necessarily. It's not being utilized for, I'm sorry?
But we just identified that the money would in fact have to be used.
We did not. What we identified was there is an increase in cost that's likely for 1 year. What we also identified was this tax increase is not for 1 year, it's forever. The other thing we identified was we have a budget that we passed in June with the flat tax, and we are able to meet our expenses in that budget. These extra expenses we are able to meet through contingency and also through FEMA or CARES Act money. So we would be able to meet our budget. Now, we might not be able to have extra money set aside, this $1.2 million set aside. We might have to release that from our savings account for the high school and use that money to meet our needs, our pandemic needs. But for us to say, we've got $1.2 million setting aside in a restricted account, but we don't want to use it to pay pandemic bills. We don't want to use it for reentry. We don't want to use it for mental health or for teacher raises. We've got that set aside and we're saving that. Can you please give us some more? It's just wrong.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would say that the only thing in summation for me is we all go to the same training as ASBA, and the thing that sticks with me is when they say, if you vote against the 4% for your school, you're saying our teachers are paid exactly what they're worth. Our kids did not benefit from any additional resources. Our technology needs are sufficiently met. There's nothing that our district needs or wants for. And that's what you're saying if you vote against the 4%.
Those same trainings say that general fund money is not to be used for construction projects or for bonding high schools. Those same trainings say that if you mismanage your money and you mismanage and misspend it, the state will come in and take over, and the board will not be able to make decisions locally.
That is not on the. Are we ready to call the vote?
I'd like to just make one further comment.
Sure.
Thank you, Scott, for correcting me. It wasn't just teachers, it was extra employees. And I want to thank Ms. Richardson for her consistency in this issue. And what she says does have credence, and I'm very empathetic to that. But I want you to know, Ms. Richardson, I appreciate your consistency in your words very much.
All right. I'm going to call the roll, Ms. Springate. Okay, the motion before the board, let's be very clear what we're voting on, is that we will levy a general tax rate of 69.8 cents on real property and 69.8 cents on personal property, which is the rate identified by the Kentucky Department of Education, which will produce revenue from real property, exclusive of revenue from new property, that is 4% over the amount of revenue produced by the compensating tax rate as defined in KRS 132.010. Ms. Brinket.
Nay.
Ms. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Richardson.
Nay.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 3-2. All right.
We also need to set other vehicle.
Okay, do we have the motion on that? Do you have the motion on that?
That rate will remain the same at 50.9. And I was looking up to see if there was.
We've got Grant here too.
The language for that, because if you got to do your, you have to do other vehicles, and you also have to do aircraft.
Okay. You want to?
No,
The wording that we send to the sheriff's office, may I read that out and see if that takes care of it?
yeah.
Do you want to step up?
So the,
Maximum saturation motor vehicle description. That's the maximum. That's what you said. It's 50.
We're not.
That is that. That would be motor vehicle. Yes.
Yes.
We would recommend a tax rate for motor vehicles of
50.9, right?
Okay.
It's a watercraft. There's a whole bunch of language to it. Do you want me to read all the language?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to make sure we have it clear. All right, setting the motor vehicle, watercraft, and aircraft tax rate, which includes recreational and non-commercial aircraft, non-commercial out-of-state, or Coast Guard registered watercraft and cable services at 50.9, right, for the 2021 fiscal year.
Okay, we have a motion, and Andrew will get that motion in the minutes, right? Mr. Wilson, a second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the roll again. Ms. Springate?
Aye.
Ms. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Richardson?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Is there anything? Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn this
So
meeting?
moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson, a second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adjourned on a vote of 5-0. All right. How many of these are, oh, wait, we've got to call the meeting to order. Does anybody want a break, a quick break before we go into our next meeting? All right. I'm going to call to the order the special board planning meeting via video teleconference. Let the record show that all members are present. We have an opportunity for audience and public comment. How many of these do we have?
19.
Okay. We do have a guest here. We'll see how this goes. And, okay. Ms. Prather's here with us tonight, so I don't want to. We'll see how long this takes to get through. Okay. Ready?
And we did have several communication that it's really hard to hear. So when you speak, if you can really get right on your mic.
Did they mention anybody in particular?
I think we had one for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone.
All right.
Ms. Evelyn, can I ask, please, are these emails that we've already received and read and responded to, or are these new comments?
I have no idea, I have not seen them.
I'm not sure. I think they just came in that 5 to 6 window.
Okay. Is that when they came in?
From between 5 o'clock.
Today?
From 2 away.
Okay.
Sent you all the one that come away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Lindsay Basler. Hello, I'm reaching out to you not only as a parent of a Woodford County student, but also as a social worker. I implore you to bring the discussion of resuming in-person schooling to the forefront of your Thursday meeting. Students are not getting an adequate educational experience in the virtual setting. I watch my bright student in her virtual meetings yearning for the social interaction that should come with being in the first grade. Although her teacher has been wonderful and has done the best she can with the circumstance, my child is completely bored by this learning format and is less engaged. My husband and I moved our family from Veterans Park School District in Fayette County to Woodford County 2 years ago for the superior K-12 school system. We feel completely let down. Furthermore, the expectations currently placed on families cannot continue, as the stress levels are unhealthy for the students and working parents. I fear for the emotional and mental health implications. I fear for the children and families with less than adequate circumstances. I fear for the children and families with parents who have mental illness or alcoholism. I fear for the children who have an intellectual impairment and are regressing each day. Families are in survival mode each day, not due to COVID, but due to managing the stress and chaos of work and virtual schooling. Virtual schooling goes against your own mission statement and core values. Please do what is right for Woodford County students and families and reopen the option for in-person classes. Respectfully, Lindsay Basler. Annabelle Crum. Dear Mr. Hawkins and school board members, as a freshman in Woodford County, I am unsure if I'll be attending school in person this year. This frustrates me because while I know life isn't fair, my path for the thorough education of schools can easily provide should not be blocked. Doing a few online courses may be the easier thing for a handful of parents and students, but it is harder for myself, my parents, and my siblings. When school was canceled, it canceled almost every beneficial way of learning. We had to teach ourselves most of the curriculum in the spring when we attempted online schooling. I only partially learned and understood new units. If students truly need this information later on in life, shouldn't we at least have the knowledge on how to apply it? If our classes truly matter to you, why would you take in-person instruction away? Our positive COVID rates are lower than a large handful of other counties. Why destroy the steady foundation of education? Why would you erode such a sturdy rock? The devastation you are allowing will impact our lives in the long term. Many students will not develop correctly when they're not allowed to go to school and have the in-person interaction they desperately need. I understand that people are fearful, but isn't it better to take the chance, knowing it would benefit students in the grand scheme of things? I don't know why you continue to make us sit at a red light when it turned green for us a little bit ago. We all travel in different lanes with different traffic. Why are you forcing us to go at everyone else's speed? The new list of demands and restrictions will put the high schoolers on an even shorter leash. They need to know the curriculum in the most thorough way possible. The high school students are preparing for college. Saying no to them because you're too scared to move forward is rejecting their futures. Denying us a proper education is going to hurt the older students the most. I'm in high school this year, and myself and many other freshmen are feeling very unprepared. What if I don't get into my dream college because you're too scared to let me in the school? If I'm denied the one-on-one I need to properly learn and comprehend the material, then how can I succeed? We can't stay in our homes forever. Additionally, there are a lot of kids that just can't handle the online programs. My younger brother can't, for one, due to some developmental issues he has. My younger sister is incapable of completing all her classes on a computer all day. My older brother is dyslexic, and it's extremely hard for him to read the long articles and passages sent out by teachers. I get distracted on the Chromebook, and I can't properly learn all my core and extracurriculars without an in-person interaction between student and teacher. My dad is busy working, leaving only my mom to help all four of us do our schoolwork. I understand online school appears to be the cake with the prettiest frosting, but that doesn't mean it tastes good. My mom can't manage everyone doing different things all at the same time. While she is amazing in many ways, she is not a superhero. That was Annabelle Crum. Mia Van
Can I
Hoos.
ask a question real quick, Ms. Elam? Is it appropriate for us to be in a public meeting reading emails that give out personal health information, medical information about students?
They did submit them for public comment, but most of these we have received privately, at least to date. What do you think about that?
I don't want to give out private information about some of our students that they may not be giving out themselves to the public if we're not supposed to be doing that.
I think that's an excellent question. I would hinge. Grant, can you come in on this?
Yes, this is the equivalent of those people standing in front of the board talking and telling you those things themselves, and they have a right to, during public comment, say whatever they want about their family.
I think it would hinge on how extraordinarily clear it was to them that these were going to be read, because most of these have been sent to us privately, so far at least.
This was actually a student speaking about her brother, so
she did mention that she wanted it submitted for public comment at the very beginning.
Yeah, but what she's saying is she can't really talk about her brother.
I thought you just said she could.
Well, I mean, she's talking about another student. She's not talking about
I'm okay if the parents are okay with that, but I don't know that they are. So that's the only reason I'm asking. I want to hear from our students. I just don't want to overstep the boundaries of putting out private information.
What is your opinion on this, Mr. Hawkins?
Yeah, I think that's between the student who has submitted the comment and their parent. But you've opened public comment and they are old enough to be given access to an email account and a computer. They've submitted public comment. It's their parents' obligation to supervise their use of their email.
I don't know if it's okay or not, and I hate for you to have to do this, Elaine, on the fly, but I think if a student is talking about another student that's identifiable, in this case, the student was talking about her brother.
Yes.
You see and that does worry me a little bit. Because she's not talking about herself, she's talking about another student that's identifiable.
But if we had a parent say my student is dyslexic or has some sort of IQ.
I guess that's okay. Grant, if you say we're good, we'll listen to them. But I agree that a lot of this is very personal. So. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a high school student could show up at your board meeting, sign up to speak, and you wouldn't have a basis for cutting them off just because they were saying something about their sibling.
Okay. All right.
So I don't think you all can police that. It needs to be the parent policing that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. We just want to be very careful about confidentialities with students. So thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Elaine.
Mia Van Hoos. Dear Woodford County School Board members, hello, I hope you are doing well during this strange and difficult time. My name is Mia Van Hoos, and I'm a sophomore at Woodford County High School. I am writing this letter to ask if we could please return to in-person school. I appreciate the teachers, staff, and administration for all the difficult work they are putting into our online school learning, but it is not the same as learning in a classroom with my peers and teacher. I truly miss the social interaction that comes with being in school with other people. I understand the seriousness that comes with this horrible virus, and I will follow all instructions and guidelines given for safety if we can return. It has been very difficult for me to learn in my classes. It is not the same thing as being with my classmates. I would like to advocate to return in person as soon as possible. Thank you for taking time out of your day to read my request. Sincerely, Mia Van Hoos. Gretchen Cottrell. Dear Woodford County Board, I am writing in regards to my two children. I have a third grader and a kindergartner at Northside. I'm so grateful for Northside's dedication to their students and trying to teach them the best way they can. That being said, my third grader is having issues finding his work daily because assignments will not refresh on his classwork page. He also frequently has issues with his teacher being able to hear him. My son is frustrated daily trying to teach himself where to find his work and how to do it on a laptop with little help. I'm not referring to the teacher, I'm referring to myself or my husband. Both my husband and I work. Luckily, my husband is able to work from home but is on the phone 24/7, therefore leaving my son to be in limbo until someone can get to him. Now to my kindergartner. Although recently this has been better, my daughter's teacher continues to be dropped from her class for the first hour or more of school. On top of this, my daughter has been unable to sign into the Google Classroom because the class code will not work. This incident has happened on several occasions. My daughter gets maybe 2 hours of instruction. Again, no fault to the teacher. How do you keep a 5-year-old occupied in front of a screen for 4 hours? How is my 5-year-old going to learn how to read through a screen? My children thrive on the structure of in-person classrooms. Woodford had a plan. Woodford can handle the logistics. Please let the children return to school. Their mental health, social skills, childhood, and parents are suffering. Thank you, Gretchen Cottrell. Gerald Markham. Dear board members and superintendent, I am writing in hopes that you, the board, are reconsidering the re-entry for in-person school today, September 10th, 2020. I strongly encourage you to be in favor of allowing re-entry. We are raising 3 school-age kids, a 12-year-old, 7th grade nephew who is an IEP student at WCMS, a 12-year-old 7th grade daughter at WCMS, and a 6-year-old 1st grade who attends Simmons Elementary. For my nephew and youngest daughter, the stress and frustration of virtual classes is heartbreaking. It's my family's best interest mentally and physically to attend school in person. I'm also asking that not only are you, the board, consider in-person reentry, but also take a tally. We, the general public, would like to know the tally numbers of students are in favor of returning to in-person school. With the tally numbers being posted on Facebook, the Woodford Sun, and any other form of communication. This way we know that our district representatives are accurately voting the majority's favor. Sincerely, Gerald Markham. Carrie Long, thank you for meeting tonight to discuss reentry. I do not choose to relay my assessment of the risk of COVID with you because each family is different in both their inherent risk and their tolerance. You are not more qualified to weigh my family's risk than I am yours. Thankfully, with parent choice, there is no need to infringe upon that vital liberty. Tonight, you have the power to place this choice where it belongs, with Woodford County families. If I were to seek advice, and I have, it would be from an educator, my pediatrician, or the CDC. I ask that tonight you represent your constituents and let parents apply the information that they have gathered from educational and medical experts to their own unique circumstances. I have a daughter in 4th grade and a daughter in 7th grade. My 7th grader seems to be doing fine academically and suffers only the social and emotional growth inhibition of isolation. I worry about developmental issues related to excessive screen time. These detriments, while small compared to my other daughter, are significant. When I stack it against the 0% chance of mortality from the Kentucky Hospital Association percent of death rate by age that she risks, it seems illogical to continue in the public school system. There are many schools locally in session and 15 child learning pods permitted by our governor. How could you possibly deny parent choice? My 4th grader continues to cry every day and feel overwhelmed. She is falling behind and falls behind further each time we don't push her to the point of tears. Is this the right thing to do? I have no idea. I'm not a teacher. It doesn't seem like the right thing to do, but I know if we don't keep up, there will be another page, quiz, story, or assessment separating her and her peers. I am watching my daughter's bright, inquisitive, deep curiosity and love for learning wilt before my very eyes. As a dyslexic child, it is impossible to teach her through a screen. She, despite the dyslexia, has thrived in her classrooms previously. I know now her previous academic success was a direct result of the deep emotional connection she has had with her last 3 teachers. They made her feel safe and secure, and they took a new route each time she needed it. This cannot be accomplished virtually. There is so much more going on inside of these classrooms in the presentation of information. Teachers are essential, and they are essential in many cases in person. I can't say enough how hard our administrators and teachers are working right now. I hope at the conclusion of this meeting you continue to have the freedom to make appropriate choices for your own families and the grace to allow your constituents to choose what is best for their families. Thank you, Carrie Long. Sarah Jo Van Hoos. Dear Woodford County School Board members, hello, my name is Sarah Jo Van Hoos. I am in 7th grade at Woodford County Middle School. I hope you consider letting us go back to school. I feel that I do much better with in-person school than online. It has been a big struggle for me. I really miss school because I can interact with teachers and students. Online school is not the same as in class with my teachers and friends. I really appreciate all of what Woodford County is doing. I pray that we may be able to go back to school very soon. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, Sarah Jo Van Hoos. Catherine Gold. I am a parent of a kindergartner and a third grader in Woodford County Schools. I must say that I am proud of all the efforts of our school and our teacher to make virtual learning a success. With that being said, there are roadblocks that simply prevent the ability to provide an adequate education for our children, especially with our youngest students. While my third grader is able to work independently throughout the school day and has an amazing teacher who keeps him engaged from 9 until 2, my kindergartner is not in the same position. He finishes his schoolwork by 11:30, and he only has about an hour and a half of that time with his teacher. He is unable to navigate his iPad independently when it comes to switching areas of Google Classroom, as he cannot read. When he is done with the school day, he only has a few brief assignments called independent work, which he cannot do on his own, as again, he cannot read. This creates two problems, one being a lack of education that he is acquiring, and two, his lack of ability to function independently prevents me from adequately working at home. Many mornings are started with tears as he does not want to log on or sit while he watches a screen that half of the time does not display his teacher due to technology issues. Not to mention the extended exposure to screens for hours a day is detrimental to his functioning. I know that working parents are struggling to manage assisting their children. Every social circle that I function in has parents expressing the same concerns that they simply cannot keep this up, that it is impacting their families and their work, and they want their children in school. Parents that originally chose the option to virtually school their children have already made plans to accommodate that decision. Parents who want their children in school understand their risk and trust that our schools have adequate safety plans in place to keep our children healthy. Meanwhile, working parents are becoming increasingly frustrated with their situations. I hear it in the tones on the Google Classroom, and as a mental health professional, I know that this is resonating negatively in our Woodford County families. At this point, some of our children are beginning to fall behind as the technology and amount of face time with their teachers are not created equal. We have unintentionally created a situation where we have a division of educational privilege in our community that only the board can stop. Not every child has access to the learning materials and support to be successful. Not every parent has the financial means or opportunity to send their child to private school or the ability to sit next to them throughout the school day. Unfortunately, many families have to prioritize food and shelter over their child's education, and you, our elected officials, have the power to stop this now. I beg you, for the health of our families and the development socially, emotionally, and educationally for our children, please allow schools to reopen immediately. If private schools in the county can successfully and safely educate their students, why can't our public schools? Thank you, Catherine Gould. Jason and Nadia Van Hoos. Good morning. My name is Nadia Van Hoos. My husband Jason and I live here in Woodford County. We have two daughters, a 7th grader at WCMS and a sophomore at WCHS. I'm writing this letter to advocate our preference that Woodford County schools return to in-person classroom instruction as soon as possible. We want our girls to be able to be in the classroom. They need to be in school not only for the academic instruction and learning and time, but also for the social and mental health aspects of daily life. We appreciate all the work and time involved with online school. Our teachers, administration, and all district staff are working so hard to try to make online successful. They are wonderful. Online is just not the same as learning together in a classroom setting. Our daughters are struggling learning in ways they have not before, and we believe in-person class is the best option. They will follow all health guidelines and recommendations to return to in-person school. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Jason and Nadia Van Hoos. Aaron Bowen. Dear board members, we appreciate the decision to add school re-entry to tonight's agenda. Before we go into what is wrong, we want to thank all the teachers who have gone out of their way to try to make this work, that have supported us and our children. We have a 7th grader who has an IEP, and he is struggling significantly with virtual school. He needs the one-on-one he receives from his resource teacher and his classroom teachers. Watching a video and then taking a test is not how he learns, and he knows this. His IEP cannot be fulfilled virtually, no matter how skilled the educator. It takes in-person school to provide for his needs. He sees virtual school as a nightmare that creates significant anxiety and stress, so much so it's interfering with his daily activities. We also have a sophomore who is in the Gifted and Talented program for math. He has also struggled with virtual school. His complaint is how it is set up. He feels that it is disorganized and thrown together. For classes, he must not only use Schoology, but multiple other programs and/or websites. He is finding it extremely frustrating to keep track, as he has to check every site and app daily just to find his assignments. This is a total of 10 websites, including Schoology, to check 4 classes. If he was in the classroom, we doubt this would be the case. The brief list of technology issues Schoology won't load. Okay, I think she's going into like bullet points. Schoology won't load. We are unable to load the website while in Google Meet. Google Meet won't load. We are getting bumped off of Google Meet while reviewing instruction. Internet issues, even with the school-provided hotspot. Our children need to be in school. They want to be in school. They need to be with their friends, classmates, and their teachers. Woodford's positivity rate is well below 1%, low enough to get these kids back to living their lives. If school-sponsored sports can practice and play games without a mask, a football game can be sold out no matter the seats available, my kids can go back to school. We want to choose to let our children to go back to school. This choice belongs to us. Thank you, Aaron and Jim Bowen. Rex Hockey. School board members. I am a parent of 2 children at Northside Elementary, one in kindergarten and one in 3rd grade. First and foremost, I strongly urge to allow families who choose to be allowed to have their children attend in-person classes at the schools. I feel in the case of Northside Elementary that a good plan was in place to adhere to cleanliness and the well-being of our children. I understand the concerns and risk of the coronavirus spread and transmission. Households with children that are in high contact or live with elderly or those with adverse health conditions should be well educated on the risk, as that is the highest risk level demographic. Those who choose to attend in-person schooling should be allowed to do so. Our society expects personnel to return to work. Nearly all businesses, production facilities, and services are open and available. Schools are needed not only for the education of our children, but to allow our society to function. More and more families are dual income families, and it is nearly impossible to work from home for those that can and monitor their children's schoolwork. Not everyone has relatives to assist full-time, and no parent should have to pay for someone to work with, monitor, or provide services to attend public schooling. Secondly, virtual learning has proven incredibly taxing on our infrastructure. Whether it be teachers freezing up, losing videos, or kids dropping connection from the classroom, the internet is stressing to handle the load. Also, not everyone has access to fast internet service. My household is trying to operate on 4 MB internet speed, with 2 children on video conference for school, and my wife who uses a lot of video conferencing as well, and me sending and receiving files. We have to resort on mobile hotspots at times to get by. Lastly, our children are missing out on some very important skills that virtual learning cannot provide. Working with others, hands-on learning, social interaction skills, and the learning that greatly contributes to growth being in the classroom. Again, I pray you vote to allow those families that choose to be in person at our schools. A secondary proposal I would make in regards to the elementary grades is allowing K through 2nd to return to school. With their age, skills, and learning capacity, I feel these younger grades suffer greatly in virtual learning. As I have stated, I have a child in kindergarten, and there is so much more to kindergarten than learning letters and numbers. There is a lot of social skills learned, understanding rules and routines, and preparing them to handle more as they progress to 1st grade and so forth. These skills can really only be learned in the classroom environment. This could also reduce the stress on internet infrastructures, making managing social distancing easier, and provide these young children with positivity for the future of their education. I still firmly believe every child should have the option to return to traditional in-class schooling. Thank you, Rex Hockey. Emily Miller. I am writing in support of in-person school reopening. Being out of school is not what's safest or best for my kids. I see them struggle with emotional issues daily. They've regressed from what they had learned last school year, and they struggle to learn or retain what little they are getting from virtual learning this year. They crave the structure, routine, and socialization that school provides. 222 total cases and 0 hospitalizations in Woodford County does not warrant shutting down the entire school district. Parents have been clear. The majority want in-person school. All the Woodford County teachers I've personally spoken with want in-person school. Most importantly, we deserve to know the parameters and requirements for reopening schools. Simply saying when it's safe is not acceptable. Dangling a constantly moving carrot is not acceptable. This cannot happen only whenever the board gets around to feeling like it. We demand solid answers on the benchmarks that our county must meet to reopen. I am disappointed in the lack of creative thinking or any attempt to at least partially open. There are many options available to get our kids moving in the right direction. Other districts are trying hybrid schedules, bringing back only grades K through 2, only the transitional grades. We cannot just throw up our hands. If my kids can go to theme parks, Walmart, and restaurants, surely they can attend school. Keeping schools closed only forces parents to pay daycares for help with schoolwork or to drop them off with more high-risk groups like grandparents. This just makes no sense. I also support canceling fall break. Kids have been on break since March. It's time to get back to the classroom and get serious about learning and making up lost time for our kids. Thank you, Emily Miller. I am writing in support of opening schools back ASAP. While I appreciate the efforts and amazing jobs the teachers have made to have a good virtual learning experience, it is just not as effective as in-school instruction. There have been issues with getting kicked off programs multiple times, meetings being glitchy and freezing up, etc. Virtual learning is not a good substitute for in-person instruction, and to be honest, it just feels like busy work again. Older kids are given such a large workload, they don't even have time to really learn the material because they are just trying to get the work done on time. At the previous meeting, it was mentioned that the rate needed to be below 5%. As of yesterday, Governor Beshear said the rate for Kentucky was 4% or less. Parents were given the choice before to send their kids to school or keep them home, and a large majority chose in-person instruction. If people want to keep their kids home, then that is fine, but for the rest of us, let our kids go back. They are all past ready and wanting to go back. We all know there are risks, but we can't keep living in fear. Please open the schools as soon as possible. We don't need a fall break either. The kids have been out of school long enough. Kristen Cable. Julie Reed. First, I want to commend the teachers and administrators for their enormous efforts. I can see that they are doing absolutely everything they can to try to help their students. I also want to thank the board for their time. I appreciate your situation. It is completely unprecedented. But given the current numbers in Woodford County and the CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation on children returning to school, I'm asking that our district move forward with the original plan for parent choice on in-school versus virtual learning as soon as possible. If the governor is okay with daycares being open and with learning pods of 15 children being instructed by lay people, it makes sense for parents to have the choice of sending their children to school to learn from qualified professionals. My daughter is frustrated and she is overwhelmed with all the different platforms to check and work in. She has to check the Google Calendar for her small group assignments. She has to check her Gmail account for any email updates. She has to look in Schoology for her Google Class links, due dates, and Google Forms for retaking a test. Then she has to go on Ingenuity for her instruction and classwork. I'm a 44-year-old nurse case manager at the University of Kentucky who has a census of 25 patients, and organizing my day isn't nearly as complicated, confusing, or overwhelming as it is for my 12-year-old 7th grader. This is not a healthy learning platform for her. I'm not afraid of sending my child to school. I'm not afraid of my decision. If other parents and guardians are not interested in school instruction, they have the choice to do what they feel is best for their child. I would like one as well. Respectfully, Julie Reed. Sheena Pitzer. Today, I sincerely hope the school board takes into consideration the situation both parents and children are in with virtual learning. I want to first say that the teachers and principals are doing whatever they can to assist with making the virtual program work. I do not place the blame on the educators. Virtual learning is not working. My son is not a candidate for virtual learning. How can a 7-year-old be expected to learn Google Classroom, check email, and submit documents? My son can hardly read. His teacher is doing the best she can, but every day I'm scared he is falling behind. I'm a working parent. I cannot stay home with my kids to be at their side every day. So my kids are currently being taught online with assistance from a young adult who's not a teacher, who is responsible for 10 children. All the 10 children are from different districts, and they wear headphones. For my kids, they also do not get any updates sent through the Remind Me app. So any new additional instructions sent throughout the day, they just never get them. I am completely out of the loop, and I have no idea from day to day if my kids are caught up, completing assignments, or getting everything done. Other than my communication with teachers, I have no clue what is going on. My resolve to assist my son is to request that my 8-year-old daughter be moved into his class where they both attend daycare with other children. Imagine that. So she can assist him as a teacher, since I cannot be with him all the time. What does this responsibility do to my daughter? How can this be my only option to leave part of my 7-year-old education in my 8-year-old's hands? My kids have been in the daycare system all summer. They wear masks all day, they socially distance, and the kids have been fine. What I would like back is not that we are trying. We are all trying, and it is failing. I am failing my kids because I have to work. You are failing my son because every day he is falling farther behind. If you cannot provide me with another...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Keep going?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
If you cannot provide me with another plan for my kids, and I am to assume he goes to daycare every day and that his school is just fine and he is on target with his learning, should I not care so much? Tell me, as a parent, what should I do now that you have a small glimpse into what I am dealing with? I'm open to concrete suggestions. Weekend school, can the teachers get online and do Google Meet instructions during the weekends and take their days off throughout the week? More parents would be home. Send the elementary kids back to school. How can they be expected to learn like this? Let all the high school and some middle school stay home? They should know how to use the computer systems where the smaller kids do not. This should open the space to allow for distancing. Leave virtual learning as an option and send those who want to go back. Think about those who don't have the privileges of education like we do. What links do children in Africa go to just to go to school? Look at the data. Now pull out all the adults, then look at the infection rate. Make the decision based on facts, not fear. This is coming from someone who is a nurse. I know the virus is serious. I believe in the precautions. I'm also a mother who knows that her kids are being put in an impossible situation, and they are exposed every day in a daycare facility. Sheena Pitzer.
Sheena Pitzer.
Catherine Mead. Board members, upon receiving an email yesterday afternoon asking my thoughts on returning to in-person teaching prior to the already established date of September 28th, I felt compelled to write and share my thoughts with each of you. I'll be clear, I voted no to the one-question survey. This was the first time that I and many of my fellow teachers had been asked about any possible change to the already decided date. I am respectfully asking all of you to please stop jumping ship midstream and stick with the original plan. Do not allow us to return to in-person teaching prior to September 28th, and only consider that we do after the 28th if all state health officials say it is safe to do so. Members of the public who came to make a comment in person tonight had to stand in a socially distanced line 6 feet apart, have their temperatures taken upon entry to the building, were led in to make their comment, and then were ushered out of the building. In order to comply with health and safety guidelines, members of the public are not allowed to stay past their time commenting, as your very own post about tonight's meeting states. Yet, at the same meeting, you are contemplating sending teachers and students back next week into classrooms that are much smaller than the library, with some classes of 26, 27, and 28 plus students on the roster. And yes, I think all of us would agree that physically teaching our students together in a brick and mortar classroom is the most effective choice when it comes to learning. But please understand that's not what is being argued here. I am simply asking that the board allow us to follow the plan that you have already voted upon. As an experienced teacher, I can tell you the lack of consistency and abrupt change are two of the biggest hurdles to learning that we face as educators. If you change your minds yet again and elect to send students and teachers back to school on September 21st, because I'm at least hoping that you would give us more than a weekend's notice, that would only be a week earlier than already scheduled. True content learning in that week would be very limited because now that we have established online routines, we must scrap those to now teach and learn the new expectation and routines of being in the building together. Masks on at all times with only the exception of lunch, hallways and stairwells that are only one way, plexiglass partitions in the cafeteria that haven't arrived yet, students sanitizing desks before leaving the classrooms, etc. Then, after Friday, October 2nd, fall break begins, and upon return back to school a week later, we're already going to have to reteach all of these expectations. Please consider the immense amount of time, planning, and preparation that teachers have already devoted to creating online engaging lessons for their in-person online learners at the high school. This group of professionals are doing their absolute best with the last-minute decisions that have already been communicated. By changing the date to return to in-person learning, you are invalidating the work of the many talented, devoted individuals that have been so flexible up to this point. We are working many extra hours to make sure that every child in our online classrooms are getting what they need while neglecting ourselves. The burden of the stress and worry that we already carry is so great. Please do not contribute to that burden by changing plans yet again. Sincerely, Katie Mead. Dan Grubb. Hello again, Woodford County Board of Education. We are extremely frustrated with virtual learning and your decision to postpone re-entry until the end of September. Every day is a battle. Google Classroom was down completely multiple days last week. Thankfully, teachers had a backup plan. Our second grader was already behind. Now she is getting half the educational time she needs. Since she cannot read, she has difficulty accomplishing anything without a parent at her side. Luckily, my wife and I are able to work from home to ensure she gets through her assignments. My daughter is also missing emotional counseling that is not available during distance learning. Maybe she should try out for the football team. I also wanted to address the fact that you canceled the September 8th re-entry meeting to replace it with a tax meeting. I assume you ultimately realized how messed up your priorities were and decided to tack re-entry onto the tail end of tonight's tax meeting. Re-entry is clearly an afterthought when getting the kids back in the classroom safely is the only logical agenda item right now. Here are a few suggestions. Everyone should wear a mask, wash their hands frequently, self-health check every morning before getting on the bus or arriving at school. Teachers, staff, and students should be encouraged to be tested for the virus as often as possible, establish a pod system, cancel sports, have classes outside as often as possible, wash your hands again, etc. Regarding data and decision to re-enter, check local data, check state data, check positivity rate, check total cases and deaths and appropriate age ranges, which is 0 to 60. Monitor pods for outbreaks. Establish thresholds of cases in each school to determine shutdown procedure. Consider flu protocols and make a reasonable decision. One case doesn't justify closing all schools. Allow families the choice to continue with distance learning if it is best for their situation, and allow families that want to send their kids to school to send their kids to school. If athletics can continue, there are zero excuses for why the kids are not in the classroom. Figure out how to do this safely. Have a nice evening, Dan Grubb. Kelly Krager. I have sent an email to the members of the board but wanted to share some of my thoughts publicly as well. I ask that we do not start school prior to September 28th. It was incredibly difficult trying to prepare for the school year when the dates and methods kept changing. Teachers generally are flexible and do what needs to be done, but even we have breaking points. To make this change now would not be fair to the teachers using that September 28th date to plan and prepare. It would not be fair to the students if we do not have the time to properly prepare the building for their return. We won't even have the partitions for the cafeteria for another 3 weeks. My expectation for the school board is to make a decision and confidently stick to that decision. Give us the time to properly prepare for students, the time you already voted on, the time we expected to have. Stop pulling the rug out from under us constantly. We have rules and set dates for a reason, stability and planning. Especially in these ever-changing times, any amount of stability we can maintain is valued. Leave the date alone and give us the time promised to do our jobs and prepare for our students. Thank you for your time and consideration, Kelly Kraker. Sandra O'Brien. School Board, I have concerns about the call for reopening our buildings. I would like to share these with you. Yes, I know that many others have written with these same concerns and I have not seen them addressed. Please let me know if they are in your reopening plan. 1, cleaning. Having children clean their own spaces is not a plan. Please specify what areas and what time of day they will be cleaned. What types of cleaning solutions will be used. I would like to see this posted for each of our schools. 2, I've seen various bits of information posted in different sites regarding social distancing in a few school buildings. Is there a posting containing this process for each building? 3, since collaborative groups can't be allowed, is direct instruction the only option? How will this be adopted? What are the main goals? 4, where is the information posted to reassure parents that there is enough PPE in our schools? How is this accounted for in writing? 5, how will quarantines be handled? Will the student begin NTI immediately? Where are the written procedures for this situation? Where are they posted? How can we reopen when there are so many important items that aren't documented? Please consider that there is much more that needs to be communicated before a return date can be decided on. Without knowing these items, the only choice is to stay virtual. Sincerely, Sandra O'Brien. And that is the last one.
Thank you so much, Elaine.
You're welcome.
All right. The next item is discussion and possible action on timing and logistics concerning re-entry. I want to say again that Ms. Prather from the Public Health Department is here, so I'm not sure who wants to take the lead on this agenda. This is a meeting.
Let me kind of get started. Kind of with some updated information, actually as of really earlier this afternoon. Originally we had discussed the plan of reevaluating on September the 8th with the possibility of opening on the 14th. And looking at our numbers to make that determination. And the board chose to look at following the governor's recommendation of opening on the 28th. Given that was the week before fall break, and knowing that we had communicated to elementary families that a fall break would be an opportunity for them to look at changing their decision. What we did then was we sent that survey information out yesterday to the families who had selected the virtual option, just to try to get a sense of numbers and what that may create for us in terms of our plan. As a result, I believe that and my recommendation would be the most logical beginning date would be the 28th, and it's for a number of reasons. As we looked at potentially starting on the 28th and then making adjustments to schedules based on parents who had chosen to come back in person, it was going to create a tremendous amount of upheaval in terms of student placement and student classroom assignments. And we felt that was unfair to be in school for 1 week and then after fall break have a number of changes due to the number of people who had requested to come back in person. And so as we talked, particularly with our elementary principals today, and we spent probably 4 to 5 hours with them over the last 2 days working through these logistical things. we felt it was best to begin on the 28th, but go ahead and allow those who are making the choice to change start on the 28th as well. That way we can have the continuity from that point through the end of the semester. And that there would be no other opportunity during the semester to change again.
Are you talking about all students?
No, elementary only. And I'll get into some reasons on that here in just a minute. But as we looked at this, what this is going to force, because up to this point we had basically each school had their own virtual academy. They had each grade level with a virtual classroom all the way through K through 5. These changes are going to force us to move to a district-wide virtual academy. So in other words, it will be a district-wide virtual academy at all grade levels except one. So in other words, there will be virtual classes at the kindergarten level that will have students from multiple schools. Okay? And that is to be as efficient as we can be with our staffing. But that will be the case at grade K, 1, 3, 4, and 5. The grade 2 numbers worked out where we can continue to keep them at the school level.
Can you share the numbers with us? That might make this more understandable.
I don't know that what we're saying is that the numbers were not balanced enough at each of the schools to warrant keeping a Northside kindergarten virtual classroom, a Southside virtual kindergarten classroom, a Simmons virtual kindergarten classroom. It didn't justify from a number standpoint. And so what we will be doing is, again, combining those students and then breaking them down into classes assigned to teachers in the virtual setting.
So you might have one teacher for all of them?
No. There will be three teachers who are teaching in the virtual kindergarten academy.
And that's per the formula.
Staffing.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain staffing formulas.
Okay.
And these aren't actual numbers, but I'm just going to give you an example. Okay. Let's say that you only had 9 students who wanted to be virtual kindergarten students at Huntertown. And you had 7 students who wanted to be virtual kindergarten at Simmons. It would make no sense to have those as 2 separate classrooms. Those could be combined and have a classroom of 16 with 1 teacher.
Yeah, I fully understand that. But what has changed to bring this on?
The survey that we sent out to parents asking if they wanted to come back in person.
Okay.
What were those numbers?
We haven't gotten, this is just based on probably about half of the responses up to this point. But trying to project out what that would do.
You said, we've always gone on the assumption it was 65 to 70 wanted to go in class, 25 to 30 did not want to. Has that changed?
I would have to go back and look at the overall numbers. It will probably go up slightly. We were probably in the 64 range when we got the final results in July. It may edge a little closer to 70 at this point in time and be somewhere in that 70-30 range. But again, without the final numbers, I can't give you a complete picture.
But it's not really changed that much.
It's changed some.
Yeah, minimal.
It's changed enough that we are no longer able to have a virtual classroom at each grade level at each school.
So, Mr. Hawkins, what I'm hearing you say is, originally we told parents you can have 2 choices. Originally we told parents we will look at the elementary school age being able to change that after fall break. So after fall break, our original plan was if you are on virtual and you'd like to switch to in-person, you can. If you're in person and you would like to switch to virtual, you can.
You can do that. You could switch that at any time.
Right. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is you've just honored that request because we're only going to be in school starting on the 28th for a week until fall break.
Right.
We don't want the kids to say, no, guys. We said fall break, after fall break. You just have to do whatever for this week.
Yep.
What you're saying is you want to plan and be efficient. And so this is kind of a flexibility piece where you've come up with this to accommodate what we originally said our plan would be. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, and I think also.
And it allows us to not only to make an adjustment one time.
Perfect. Thank
And
you.
not make it twice.
I think people now have a very good understanding of virtual. They have a very good basis to make that decision on what they want their kids to do. You know, when we were going to just start out before, they weren't going to have that, so now they do. So they have an opportunity to make their choice now.
And again,
having experienced both.
And again, we went ahead and looked at doing the survey now since the start date of the 28th was only 1 week prior to fall break. And it made more sense, and Ryan jump in here too, but it made more sense just to make the adjustment once instead of doing it twice. Now, there are going to be students who have a different teacher. That is going to happen. It will happen in the virtual setting. It could happen in the in-person setting. And part of that is because we are trying to maintain numbers in our classrooms that will allow us to have the maximum distance that we can have. But it will cause us to, and part of the logistics, and I think this is logistics, is I will be asking for you to approve 8 new teaching positions at the elementary level.
And is that based on a staffing formula?
That is it's not based on a staffing formula because we cannot operate at cap and keep we can't get 6 feet. I mean, this is to create as much distance as we can create in the classroom.
So the staffing formula is out right now. We're going with pandemic, emergency, what we have to educate our kids based on the numbers we're allowed to have.
So I would have a question on that. Does this still allow us to honor the request for all the teachers that asked to be virtual teachers?
Anybody who had who asked for it from a health standpoint, they were honored across the board. We went back a second time because that did not cover all of our virtual classrooms. Okay. We went back a second time and asked for additional volunteers. We were not able to honor all of those who asked to volunteer for that. And actually at the elementary level, we didn't have enough. So anybody that truly wants to teach virtually at the elementary level is going to be able to teach virtually.
Okay.
Now, that's not the case at the middle and high because, again, you still have to have enough teachers to be able to do your in-person as well. But again, anybody who met the health criteria where they would need to teach virtually, every one of those people,
at every school,
every one of those teachers, we met that request.
What about employees?
other employees.
Employees that aren't teachers.
Anybody who has a health condition is working with Garrett. Anybody that's a non-teacher is working with Garrett individually.
And so I know you have seen emails because we all have gotten them as well. Is there any thought to, if we're making that adjustment to the elementaries, to allowing middle and high schoolers to change, or do we have to wait until that semester break?
Our recommendation is to wait till the semester break because it would create a tremendous upheaval in the scheduling in most schools. I don't think we could staff it because the only reason we think we can do this is because you generally have more elementary teachers available to hire. We struggled to fill the 5 positions that we approved before school started at the middle and high.
And originally,
So to be able to say, I can find more middle school teachers or more high school teachers at this point in time, to be able to do that, I don't believe that's feasible.
Mr. Hawkins, in our original plan, I know you said that we had offered parents of elementary to be able to switch after fall break. What was the original plan for the middle and high school when they could switch or have that?
It would be at the semester break.
Okay, so that's consistent?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And again, this is something that I understand that there's some that would like to change now. I understand that completely. But I also feel like we need to be in a position to be able to offer them what we need to offer them. And I don't know that we
That's
can.
certainly been the teacher's response.
And so to be able to do it at the middle and high school, I just don't, and I don't think either one of the principals felt like it was feasible. It would be a scheduling nightmare at the high school. And again, to be able to try to find certified teachers when we're talking about here at the end of September, I don't know that that's feasible for those two levels. But again, what we're trying to do is to minimize the disruption. However, we know that there are going to be a fairly large number of kids who are going to have a different teacher when we start in person.
They've already been installed. Is that what you mean?
I'm saying the teacher that they have had up to this point may change. Okay, and part of that is because at the elementary level, in order to maintain and balance numbers, they may have moved, because they were essentially doing the same thing. A student who may have signed up as an in-person student may have been placed with a virtual teacher to balance numbers. So when they come back in person, they will have a different teacher.
We will be able to explain that.
Yeah. Well, and again, this will allow us to do it once and not twice. And I think that is something that at the end of the day, that's what we came back to. Ryan, is there anything else that I haven't touched on?
The point that I kept making was we have a set of numbers, we classify, we kept classification of what the original choice was by parents of if they were, I need to turn on. Hello. Is that good? There we go. Kept the original choice classification of if they were in person or virtual. So essentially we were first trying to plan off of that, and then if we stuck to what the plan was to allow them to choose again at the break, we would have to plan off a new set of numbers. So we said, let's just scratch that. Let's get that new set of numbers, staff it, plan, and move forward with that. Rather than, as he said, make that switch and then come back after break and make yet another, which could result in a student having 3 teachers over that whole span of time.
This will also allow us the time, if the board were to approve the positions, to go ahead and get those posted, filled, and allow classrooms to be set up in time to start on the 28th.
What do our spacing distances look like with these numbers at the elementary?
I think I have a question for Cassie on this too, like what the requirements that are.
Debbie, nobody can hear you.
It is and again, Cassie and I met today. We talked yesterday. We talk on a regular basis. The goal is that we want to get at least 3 feet between students.
And is that the current healthy at school?
I don't necessarily classify a distance.
Yeah, please join us, Cassie.
I think we all agree that if we can try to create at least 3 feet, knowing that students are going to be in masks. And again, I go back to, that is the key. The masks are the key. And so, if a class has 22, it may be 3 to 4 feet apart. If a class has 19, it could be a little further than that. I don't want anybody to expect that we're going to have 6 feet between students when we come back. And so, but again, we are seeking to have at least 3 feet between students, and again, trying to have those masks
Mr. Hawkins,
at all times.
will we be following all of the Healthy at School guidelines and all of the CDC guidelines? I know they've been updated. Will we update our procedures or our information to reflect that?
We have, when we've had updates, we try to work through Elaine, because she put together that guidance document that's on our website.
Wonderful.
And, again, when we talk about the processes that we have in place in our plan, one thing, and I certainly appreciate Cassie, they have done a fantastic job when we've had questions and we want to ask about this or that. I can text her and say, "Can you take a call?" or Kelly calls her, or Garrett calls her, and she has been so accessible. She's reviewed our plans and said, "You're good to go." And we ask her about the plexiglass. What does that mean? And so she tells us this is what we're going to be able to do. When we talk about, and I know the one person asked about cleaning. Okay, well, we've got a solution that teachers can. We've got the spray bottles. This thing right here. It says hand sanitizer, but it's also a cleaner because it's 80% alcohol. So a teacher can spray this on the desk. A student can take the towel, wipe down their desk, and they're ready to leave. And she's given us the green light on doing those types of things.
Right. So I guess I was just curious, just as a matter of, what is the Healthy at School as far as social distancing?
Social distancing is always going to be 6 feet. That's the
Even the
recommendation.
Healthy at School, because I guess I thought that maybe they're requiring masks of even kindergartners now. Is that correct?
Not for, have we voted?
I have that as item that I want to ask for.
I guess I thought with everybody wearing masks, maybe the social distancing had narrowed a little bit, but that's not true.
It's not true.
Okay.
However, I've been in every classroom with Mr. Hawkins, and we feel like that's a reasonable expectation of getting the kids 3 feet apart. And then I have some case information for you all too. And then,
Yeah, go ahead.
in regards to the hand sanitizer, we're trying to source some more of that for the school district. We were able to provide some before, and we hope to be able to provide that again.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, were you? I didn't.
Oh, I thought she said she had some case information.
Yes. Just wanted to give you all an update on the
Okay.
cases. When you all met before, we were in a surge. We had a total of 87 cases reported in August, and the picture looks a whole lot different here in September. We currently have 12 active cases, and that rate per 100,000 population is actually down to 4.3.
Okay.
So we're in a cautionary phase, and in a private meeting with Dr. Stack at the beginning of the week, he informed me that some tools are going to be released at the beginning of next week that will give us a good metric to go by
great.
for reopening, closing, things like that.
That will be used statewide, so okay.
And again, it'll be a recommendation. And Mr. Hawkins and I have talked, there could be some factors affecting that. For example, we hope this doesn't happen, but if we had an outbreak in a long-term care facility, that could cause our numbers to spike astronomically. So would that be?
Perhaps that wouldn't
affect
the school.
Exactly.
If we knew it was contained in a jail or one of those other facilities.
And that's why I think it's a recommendation, but it does have flexibility.
But at
Because
least
you're
it's
able to
going
look.
to be some kind of metric statewide, because, we heard that in the public comment tonight. People just kind of strive that they don't want it to be case by case. They want to know what the rules are going to be. So that's great news.
And the state positivity rate currently is 4.14. So if you all have any other questions about cases and things like that, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Yeah, I've got an observation and a question.
Okay.
My observation is I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you and your staff do. I took advantage of one of your offerings and had a COVID-19 test through the drive-through, and your people were absolutely remarkable. Public servants at their best.
Thank you.
So I wanted to share that with you. My second my question is, Dr. Sack and the State Public Health Department, I listened to one of his news conference, and he said that it's not a mask or less than 6 feet. It is a mask and 6 feet. That's his recommendation, right?
Correct.
Okay. In one of the, I spoke to Mr. Hawkins last week about 2 board members that shared with me that they chose to go a hybrid route. One was in Hopkins County, one was in Hardin County. And the main reason they did that was to have students on Monday and Tuesday, students on Thursday and Friday, and cleaning on Wednesday. And that gave the ability to do both 6 feet and a mask, which they felt was the safest way to do it. I wondered about your thoughts on the hybrid model.
I'm sure as a district, Scott would be better able to answer that question.
All right, I'll ask Scott.
I mean, I'm sure there are many logistics and many different things that would go into making a hybrid plan work, and I'm not sure what the intricacies of those plans would be.
It's my understanding that many districts are using a hybrid approach, but I don't know the numbers.
There are several, and there are several that are doing the 5-day-a-week model as we are proposing. You know, and here's my fear, and it echoes what so many of the parents shared tonight, is a hybrid model gets you access to a teacher 2 days a week. The other 3 days, you don't necessarily have access to that teacher at all because they are teaching the other half of the students in that classroom. That is very concerning to me. If we got 3 weeks of 5-day-a-week instruction in, it would take 6 weeks or 7 weeks of a hybrid model to have the same level of instruction with the teacher. And that concerns me.
They're hardly getting any instruction right now. We've got to figure something out that's better than what we're doing right now.
And so that's why I'm proposing to do the 5-day-a-week starting on the 28th. And I do believe we can do it. Will we have cases? Yes, we will have cases.
I think we need to make it clear that when we have cases, how many cases is it going to take to close school back down? Because we're going to get in school, and I've been vocal about wanting to go back into school. But how many cases does it take in a school for us to have our kids right back at home dealing with virtual and online learning?
Is that what you anticipate this metric from Dr. Stack will address?
I do.
Do you think it'll get that specific, hopefully, or I don't know.
I hope that it does.
I mean, you're guessing, I know.
But I don't know that you could say, if I have 5 cases, I saw, one of the schools that had reopened had 5 cases in their high school. They're still in school. They didn't have to close. They were able to manage those numbers. And so I don't know, to your question, that you can say, if we have 2 cases, we're going to close, because you may have to shut down 1 classroom and everything else in the school stays open. It is so dependent on how those cases are spread out, the level of tracing that is involved, and all of those factors come into play.
Can you finish your answer that you were saying something about Dr. Stack? Like, do you have any?
I was just going to say, I'm eager to read up on what's released on Monday and research that, but I just want you all to know as a board that we've been in constant communication too in determining, okay, if this happens, if you have a few cases in a classroom, then that classroom could go to virtual learning. Because if you have 1 case in a classroom, or even 2, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire classroom would be required to quarantine.
And I think that's a balancing act, and you heard it in the public comment too. People want to know. I mean, I'm curious, and that's not always possible, but whatever guidance we could communicate to our community and our parents, because a lot of the public comment comes from parents, and if I'm okay to send my kids, it's okay. I should have that choice. But, this is a community thing when we open our schools too. And I've heard a lot from community people who aren't even associated with the schools. Like, if you open schools, you're going to unleash it. So if everybody just has, as much in writing, as much as we can, always saying there, of course, things could change depending on individual circumstances. But hopefully we'll get something like that because I think people are craving it.
Yes, with the 28th date.
Totally agree with that, and I think that having that kind of defined metric that everyone is able to see and taking the subjective nature of the board decision out of it is a good thing.
Sure.
I think there will be a subjective measure on closing.
I agree.
No matter what.
I think that you, Ms. Prather, will have a chance to work together and be able to address that on a case-by-case, school-by-school, kind of rolling decision. I think it's very likely that we're going to have to react to one school having a pocket of activity when the others may not. But I think if we can get to the point where we have that metric that allows us to open and allows you two to work in conjunction like you have shown you're very good at, I think that puts the community in a better place than the limbo that we've experienced with governor's recommendations and things like that. I think that's a benefit and a transparency that we need.
Yeah, and I would just echo, thank you so much, Mr. Hawkins and Ryan and the task force and all of our teachers and staff. I feel like you guys have just been working since probably day one, since the first case hit Kentucky, with the task force that you got together really, really early. And there is a lot of in writing documents, procedures. The Healthy at School guidelines are on our website. Mr. Hawkins went over the plan at with the task force at the reentry meeting, the very first one that we had. I think what I'm hearing the public say is they would like for us to obviously be very transparent, to share information, to communicate. And I think letting people know that document's out there and they can get answers to all those questions. And they can also call Ryan or call the principals or call the administrators and get that. But what I'm hearing people say is they want us to make a plan and stick with it. Yes. So we had a plan that we all voted 5-0 for, and I think the public just wants us to be transparent, to use local data, to listen to our superintendent and our task force and our health department, and to honor the votes that we've made. And I feel like that the more we can talk about things and point folks in the right direction, and like tonight, Mr. Hawkins, with you guys saying, we looked at it and what we said was we were going to reevaluate elementary at fall break. So that means we're going to do something a little bit different and just kind of trying to be flexible and think about those things. I think the public appreciates that so much. And one thing I'm hearing over and over is parents and students really appreciative, deeply appreciative of everything the teachers and the staff and the administrators and our local agencies, the health department, everything that you all have been able to do and do for our students and putting our students first. They're just so thankful for that, and so am I. So thank you.
And I agree, and I think that it is, we did have a plan, and then the governor changed, and then, there's just this statewide, because we haven't built walls around our county, so then we change, and so then tonight we decided maybe we'll change back, but I hope people understand that. You, more than anyway, know how things are changing. So that's interesting that I think the social distancing, we're going to do what we can. It's not really, is there anything else new in those guidances that was different from the original safety of school?
I believe there's going to be a reporting requirement too for schools.
Okay.
Cases and
then how is our testing in our county? Is it pretty much always available? And do you know if many of our students have been testing that are already participating?
So testing has gone down. Even though we now are offering testing, we're limited to offering it one morning a week. But we're even having trouble, getting people to sign up for that. So just overall, in Woodford County, I think we only had 100 people test last week.
Oh, so we have excess tests. Maybe we have unused tests.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So with the new ability to do testing at the health department, would that allow us, if we did have a class that had a positive, could we send the families to the health department for testing for the rest of that class?
Yes. So 5 to 7 days after the last known exposure is when we would recommend that testing occur, whether it be at the health department or at their provider. But we would certainly be willing to provide testing.
And what's the cost associated?
Our testing is free.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We can require it.
Sure. No, I understand that, but it is available.
Yep.
Something that they can get here in the county. I think that's a great benefit for all of our families. And how will that work? So if it's 5 to 7 days after the last known exposure, if you and I are in a class together and you test positive, am I quarantined from that exposure and for that 5 to 7 days until I can be tested?
If you were sitting close to me,
How is there a measurable?
there's really not a metric. Yeah, and I think the distance would be different dependent on classroom size, how many kids were in there. But if we were in a corner together for more than 15 minutes, then you could very well be a quarantined contact. And we're actually working on a presentation to give to the nurses. The disease investigation staff are working on that next week so that we can work in tandem if and when we have a case. And we also have written up advisories for the schools to send out, general advisories, and then also contact case advisories so that they know the signs and
to our
symptoms.
parents.
Yes.
Oh, great. That'd
Yes.
be great.
Thank you all, and thank you to Kelly. I know you have done yeoman's work all summer in preparing for this. Our district is very lucky to have you. Thank you for all of the hours and time and excellence that you put into this.
So let me just ask one more thing, because somebody did ask it, and I know people are watching. You went over a little bit on Danny's question about quarantining. I think it's very impossible for a teacher to say, oh yeah, Johnny was within 3 feet of Susie for 15 minutes 3 days ago. So some of those just realities, are we gonna look at quarantining in a room or?
That's where we'll provide seating charts
Yeah.
and those types of things. I mean, the contact tracers know what questions to ask.
Okay.
And so our job is to provide them the information. Where did they sit in the classroom? Where did they sit in the cafeteria? Where did they sit on the bus if they rode the bus? Those types of things, because that'll be the information that will generate then who the close contacts are. Again, if the student's across the room, they're probably not a close contact.
And they haven't cheated, but we can't help it. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you, Cassie.
And they're used, the disease investigative team, they're used to asking these same questions as it relates to workplace, environment, things like that. So.
Okay. Again, does anyone else have any questions? I want to thank you so much for making yourself available to us. I know you work very diligently with Mr. Hawkins, and we get information from him. But we have a lot of people watching too, and I think sometimes they like to hear from you as well. So, and thank you so much for the good work you're doing.
Is there anything else you want to share?
I want to thank you all for all the work you are doing.
Okay.
And then I want to quote my son's 4th grade teacher that the theme of this year is going to be grace and flexibility, and that was Melissa Hudson.
Yes.
And so kudos to her for coming up with the theme.
Sometimes these years run together. This one will stick out for the rest of their lives. It will not blur into the rest of the experience of school.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mr. Hawkins, what do we need to vote on?
So we are still set for returning on the 28th. That is our target date. I would ask that you approve requiring masks for all kindergarten students who return in person. So I would ask that that be a requirement. We're doing it, and we are going to encourage preschool. Although the CDC says anybody older than 2, I don't know that we're real comfortable yet mandating that for 3 and 4-year-olds, but I would ask that you add the mandate for masks for all kindergarten students returning in person.
So moved.
I think we have several other things to talk
Well,
about.
can we just do this at first?
It's about math,
Yes.
kindergarten, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Springate and a second by Mr. Wilson. I guess that we require masks for kindergartners and
All kindergarten students returning in person
all
and
kindergarten students returning in person and what else?
we would just strongly encourage preschool
And strongly
students.
encourage that the preschool students wear them as appropriate. Okay? There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion passes 5-0. Anything else?
The second item would be to approve an additional 8 teaching positions for our elementary schools.
So moved.
I'm not sure that's on the agenda.
I would consider that part of logistics concerning reentry.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Would you agree with that, Grant?
Is Grant available?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Ms. Springate.
Sorry. Grant, are you gonna say something else?
He's just moving around.
So, on that, Mr. Hawkins, how many students switched to prompt the 8? I know you said you didn't have all of them back yet. I was just.
Well, again, we had some numbers that were going to be problematic before this.
Okay.
So there was going to be some additional positions regardless. We're much more comfortable with this number being what we need to make it work.
So this 8 is in addition to what we did last week.
Correct.
So
Those were all middle and high.
Okay. And then, so these 8 teachers are all in the elementary.
Correct.
Assuming we did not have a pandemic and we were operating as normal, how many teachers would this be above our formula?
13 total.
Okay.
Because of 5 previously.
5 for middle and high school, and 8 for elementary.
So none of this is because of increased enrollment.
I mean, we've had some new students come in, but we've also lost some students.
Prompted any of this, because often we add positions because of increased enrollment,
Correct.
but this is not because of that.
Correct.
And then I think Danny was asking, and I'm curious too, where these teachers are going to be. Like, where do we have classrooms for them?
Well, we have classrooms because there were teachers who were teaching virtually. And so many of them will teach from home once students come back in, especially if they were health compromised.
So they have to move out of their classrooms.
We will have to move them, and if they want to be in the building, we can move them to other spaces within the building if they can still have to teach their virtual classroom within the school.
And so these 8 will get us down to a certain number in a class, in an in-person class?
Our goal is to try to stay in that 20, no more than 22 to 23. It would actually be a little lower than that in our primary classrooms, but no more than 22 to 23 is the goal, particularly for 3, 4, and 5.
And are these going to be year contracts? Because
These would be for the year, yes, ma'am.
so if something happened next semester and we were able to resume operations, these teachers would still be under contract for the year.
Yeah.
Could we utilize them in some way? Like, say we do return, everyone returns in January. Could we utilize these teachers in some way to do some kind of, assistance for
We could.
the remediation?
We
kind
could,
of
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Which would be a huge asset, given the slide that we're anticipating we're gonna see.
Yes.
Where are these teachers going?
South Side, Simmons, and North Side.
Like 2 each or?
It depended on the grade level and how the numbers came out.
Also depending on who was designated for virtual.
For
academy
virtual, yes.
Off of health risk or whoever.
Right.
So if you pulled from one place, then we got it for virtual.
Okay.
What's
And the
fun?
cost of this is?
If you assume that most of them will be new, typically it's around 45,000.
So 360.
About 360.
What's the funding source for that?
We will have to take it out of our general fund.
We don't have it.
I understand that.
Okay, so what would the funding source be? Contingency fund?
Well, that's part of the general fund.
But, I mean, then that would be your answer.
Well,
contingency fund.
again, unless we have, if the board decides to unrestrict some funds, then that may be allowed to be covered out of the general fund and not have to hit the contingency as much. So that really depends on what the board wants to
But
do.
at this point, it would be the contingency.
More than likely, yes, sir.
Or CARES or FEMA or one. I know that it's.
Yeah,
That's a potential, but no.
Sure.
I would prefer not to use federal money for salaries of employees because it doesn't go nearly as far. Because you have to pay the federal withholdings and all of that, and it's much more costly to pay for that out of federal money than it is to pay for it out of local money.
How's it
For
cost any
example,
different?
Because you have to pay more of the benefit side of things out of the federal dollars that are not covered. For example, health insurance. A lot of the health insurance is covered by the state. If you pay for it out of federal money, you're picking up that health insurance cost for that employee if you pay for it out of federal money. So it adds another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 that you are covering from that grant. So it's just more costly. It doesn't go as far, is what I'm saying. The federal money wouldn't go as far.
Okay, and I guess just one more time, you don't have a number on how many students changed?
I think it was right at 100 up to this point.
As of now, it's 133.
130, just for point of clarity, 133 what?
Chose to go from virtual to in-person.
Why do you believe that to be the case?
I think there's a variety of
From the
reasons.
presentations tonight, well, what do you think the main reason would be?
I don't know if the virtual wasn't what people expected, if it was more challenging, if it was more difficult. I don't know what they expected from the virtual when they chose it. Maybe they had a greater fear in July than they do now. So I think there's a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't have childcare anymore.
I can speak on behalf of a parent who chose virtual, who has a student who is taking virtual now. And I completely regret doing virtual. I wish I had done in person, online, because virtual learning with the Edgenuity, it's a nightmare. It is a complete nightmare. And I don't think that the public understands, the school board members, the 5 of us, we don't have any control over that. That is a curriculum issue, which is directly a responsibility of yours, and I believe Mr. Asher, is that correct? You all chose what we're using for the virtual learning. So I think that, and we didn't get, as parents and as board members, we didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't have any time to decide. It was basically, I think, most of the community's decision was either I want my child in school because I feel like it's safe for them to go to school and I want to have that option for them to do that or online, or I want to do virtual because, like, for our reason for doing virtual isn't that we think that
that we're scared that our son's gonna get COVID or that it's gonna be a huge outbreak. It's because we have never, even to this day, been able to have a good explanation of what quarantine would look like. If he was quarantined, would my husband and myself be quarantined? So parents had to make a hasty decision on this. And, you know, I think that we as board members get a lot of kickback from the community because they don't understand that we don't have control over that. That's your responsibility. So while we're talking about this and it all coming together and people are listening, waiting patiently once again, it's almost 8:30 for us to make a decision for them. I want them to realize that we don't get to make that decision. If they're struggling with that, they need to contact you.
No, they
and
need to
Mr.
contact their
Asher.
teacher.
Okay.
But they can also contact you. They have the right to. And
They can contact me, but if they are struggling
And-
within their courses, they would
Ms.
need to reach
Richardson,
out to
my
them.
point
Mr.
is,
Hawkins.
Mr. Richardson, I want you to finish this discussion and we can do it right after this, but right now we're in the middle of a motion about adding these teachers.
okay.
So if we could continue on that. I know that I have a motion from Ms. Springate. Could I have a second? To add the 8 teachers.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Bradley. We've had plenty of discussion, but I just want to keep us on what we're specifically discussing at this moment. Is there any more discussion about adding 8 teachers per Mr. Hawkins' request?
I think it's fine to do that, but I do think, with all due respect, that she should be allowed to finish.
No, she absolutely, I want her to, but we can go on to the discussion of the virtual if we want to discuss that. I just don't want to move off of the motion in front of us with other topics. Do you understand that, Ms. Richardson?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right, is there any more discussion on adding 8 teachers per Mr. Hawkins' request? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote since we're having some trouble with the audio. Ms. Springate.
Aye.
Ms. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Richardson.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, I think that we have started a discussion of our virtual program. Is there anything else you need for us tonight to vote on, Mr. Hawkins?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And
I
are we
do-
okay
Go
on the
ahead,
agenda?
Ms. No, wait, Ms.
I do believe
Ms.
that-
Richardson, so I'm going to let her
I
finish
do
her.
believe that a decision was made to allow elementary school students that signed up virtual to choose in person. Isn't that what you just articulated?
At the break, at the fall break, yes.
And did that require board action?
That was part of our plan that the board heard and reviewed and asked questions about.
Your recommendation on middle school and high school having the same opportunity. You said you were going to address that.
I already did.
Okay.
I said it is our recommendation that they remain with their choice until the semester break.
Okay.
Go
Miss
ahead.
Springate gave a summary of what we heard tonight. She forgot something. She missed something. If I could read from Ms. Pitzer. Virtual learning is not working. Teachers are doing all they can. We are all trying and it is failing. Right there. Dan Grubbs. I'm frustrated. Every day is a battle. If you listened to what these folks said, virtual learning is not working. And for many people, the problem has been solved. They have a choice to go back into the classroom. Other people don't have that choice. They can't come back to the classroom because of their individual needs. We can't ignore that virtual learning is not working. We allow the opportunity for elementary students because it's the right thing to do. We don't allow it for middle school and high school because it's burdensome. It would cause scheduling problems. It would lead to congestion. That's inconceivable to me that we would. I asked the question, why do we do hybrid? And the superintendent said, I'd rather have the students in class 5 days than 2 days. It's better. It's more, it's where they need to be. But I've got a letter here that's an indictment about middle school online education. And just because somebody, to Ms. Richardson's point, didn't understand what virtual was going to be, why would we penalize them in middle and high and not allow them to reap the benefits that 133 elementary school teachers, students are going to get? That's one question. The second question is, what are we going to do about those poor students who can't reap the benefits that you've talked about for 2 months? What are we going to do about them? What are we going to do to ensure that there is equitable education among all 4,000 of our students? It's not working now. What are we going to do?
And I would first say that you are correct, and it's probably not working for some. I've heard from several that it's going extremely well for their kids too. I understand that, Mr. Wilson. I understand that.
I mean,
I understand that. I get the emails too.
okay.
Okay?
But
now, let me,
nothing's
no. You asked me some questions, and I'm going to respond. First of all, I did say that it would be a scheduling nightmare. I also said it would create serious staffing issues where we could not provide for our kids what we need to provide. That is a huge issue. Okay? Edgenuity that we are utilizing has been in place in this district for the last 4 years. We have used it on a regular basis for full credit courses, both for students who are behind and for students who are in our night school WAVE program for initial credit. You even said, you quoted someone earlier in a meeting who talked about the class that they took in Edgenuity and how good it was.
It was an art class. I vividly remember.
Right, and so you spoke very positively about the platform that we have in place.
Right.
Okay? Is it a difference? Yes, it's different. It's not NTI, and we said it wasn't going to be NTI. It is for initial credit. So there is more work involved. It is more independent initially. We do have teachers available for support who are working with their students in the online platform. Now, if you would like for us to do hybrid, tell us.
What does hybrid? I don't mean.
No, you have brought up hybrid over and over and over again for the past 6 weeks to me in conversations. So if you want us to do it, tell us, and we will do our best to figure it out. Do I think it's best for kids? No.
Do you need to take a break?
No. I am trying to respond to your questions.
I didn't ask any question about hybrid in my
talk. You brought up hybrid multiple times in your conversation. And I have
Gentlemen, I'm sorry to cut you off. The first person cut off in this whole thing was Ms. Richardson.
I'm done. I don't have anything else to say.
Okay,
This is
I'm
ridiculous. It is a nightmare. We need to vote so that our parents know what their kids are going to do, and we need to stop arguing. This is ridiculous.
Okay.
This is why people go on social media and talk about us the way they do. We are making fools of ourselves. Let's vote. We've talked it to death. We have something that we need to vote on. Let's get it done.
I'm not sure we have anything we need to vote on.
Well, then let's make.
let me just say this. This meeting was called by a majority of the board. I think it was originally instigated by Ms. Frigate. Do you have a motion that you want to make?
I did not have a motion that I want to make. I wanted us as a board to transparently discuss and to let our public and our staff and even ourselves know what the plan was. I want us to stick to the plan. Mr. Hawkins tonight has said the plan was to allow elementary to switch. The plan we voted on and was described in the open meeting and was posted on our site was not to allow middle and high school to switch at the fall break. So we are sticking to our plan. We need to be consistent. We need to base our decisions on data and evidence and our local experts. We need to listen to our superintendent and follow the recommendations, and we wouldn't have had to call this extra meeting.
Sherry,
If
we
we
called
could
this
just-
extra meeting because we wanted to revisit this September 28th.
Because we canceled the meeting on 9/8. Again, I don't want to argue about it. I just want to say, as a board, let's be professional. As a board, let's be transparent. As a board, let's be consistent. Let's listen to our superintendent and data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your.
So are we just here tonight to say that on September 28th, we are going to go back to in-person?
Okay.
Is that what we're not voting
And
on anything?
I don't want to argue, but I do want to pick up on a couple of things Mr. Wilson said, just a couple of things. It is clear that our virtual education needs a work, that our children are not getting an education through that the logistical, technological, from what I'm hearing, nightmares are probably the biggest part of it. They can't even get on in a systematic, synchronized way. When we go back to school on September 28th, there are going to be a lot of kids left at home with that situation. We cannot leave them in the dust. So I have talked to Mr. Hawkins. He's assured me we'll continue to work on that. They have to get the same education that the kids in class are, the same quality, the same access to teachers, the same, standards met. So I think it is clear, and it is a Herculean task. I'm not blaming anybody. But when the majority of the people are in this building, the majority of students having fun, laughing, getting all those things they've been missing, we cannot forget those virtual students who are left at home for no reason of their own, the health of themselves or their families, and make sure that they get the education that they deserve to. So I know that our staff will continue to work to improve that virtual education for them, and out of sight will not be out of mind. Is there anything else before, let's just be clear to the public that's watching, the return date, because there's been no motion to change it, remains in September 28th.
That is correct.
And we did add the
We are
teaching
going to
positions.
have kindergartners wear masks, and we're going to, so parents with kindergartners can start preparing for that. We're going to have preschool, hopefully, so parents of preschools might want to do that. And we're going to hire AV teachers. Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there anything else?
No, I was just going to say, I'm very pleased that 70% of our children are going to get the education that they deserve.
And I hope those that want to come back, there will be a way that they can.
And I will continue to be a voice for those 30% that don't have that same
Yes,
opportunity.
we will continue.
And that's not argumentative, that's not being disrespectful, that's what I'm supposed to do.
You're right, that's what you're elected to do. All right, is there anything else? Is there a reason for our executive session? Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Ms. Springate. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?